when the roster is stacked full of rookies that you drafted and undrafted free agents, the time is to go out and get some veteran help. That's what we're going to talk about today.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Boy, that was a disaster of an intro. I mean, it was terrible.
You fought your way through it, though.
I didn't give up. You can't give up. You die stumbling forward.
Right. I mean, it's live, so the show must go on. So that's
right.
You just got to fight through it.
There was a time where I'd have stopped and I'd be like, we got to start that one over. We can't put that out into the world. But when it's live, what are you going to do?
It's out there.
So everybody knows that I sometimes listen. Sometimes we screw up. That's how it goes. It's fine. It's fine. Because you know who else screws up sometimes? The Miami Dolphins, specifically Christopher Greer.
They screw up a lot more often than we do, to be fair.
Yeah. And they all get to keep their jobs. So, Hi, everybody. Come on in. Welcome in. I'm Josh Katzker. This is Aaron the Brain. We're so excited to be back with you for another episode of the Same Old Dolphin Show. Thanks for being with us here. Shout out to everybody watching live on the I'm a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page, as well as everybody watching on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Do me a favor right now, if you are watching live, go ahead and smash that like button. Tell you what, even if you're not watching live, you can still smash the like button. We'd appreciate it very much. Leave us a comment. Let us know who are some free agent targets that you would like to see the Dolphins go after between now and the start of training camp and even really the start of the season. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So let us know. Put it in the comments. Which free agents do you think the Miami Dolphins should target? Throw them in the comments. We'll share some as we are live here on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. This week, Tuesday, May 13th, Mike Oliva is going to drop a show, and he is joined by a very special surprise guest. I cannot say anything more than that it is a surprise guest, but you are not going to want to miss this show. It's going to drop. It's in the can. It's already recorded. It is going to drop soon, and it is going to, you're not going to want to miss it. So subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel, turn on notifications so you're notified as soon as this goes live. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you are also subscribed to Dolphins Talk Extra. For as little as $3 a month, you get extra shows. We're going to do a bonus segment after this show. After we go off the air, we're going to immediately head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Dolphins Talk, where we're going to do a segment talking about knowing what we know now, whether or not we would still trade for Tyreek Hill. We're going to be talking about that on our bonus segment today. You also get access to our Discord server, additional extra shows. We got a daily mailbag show starting up. Aaron's going to be doing a film review of all of the rookies that the Dolphins have drafted in the first couple of rounds of the draft. So you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure you're heading over there to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Subscribe today for as little as $3 a month. All right, Brain.
You scared me there for a second.
Why? What did I do?
You,
How did I
you're
scare you?
out here saying, "Oh, Aaron's going to be doing a film review of all of the rookies that the Dolphins drafted," and then you added in, "Oh, in the first couple of rounds." I
Yeah,
said,
but
"Oh,
respect.
yeah."
I mean, I would love for you to do a film study for all of the rookies, but I know that you don't have that kind of time. You're a very busy man. You got a lot going on. There's a lot of ice cream to eat, and you don't have time to be running around doing film reviews for every draft pick when there's all that ice cream out there.
If I watched every snap of Dante Trader's collegiate career, I wouldn't be able to be watching Drag Race All Stars right now.
I mean, fair enough. I'm surprised you're able to watch Drag Race All Stars right now when you're doing the show, but maybe you're a better multitasker than I thought you were.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
That's right. That just like me getting through the intro. So let's get into it. Let's look at this roster, this Miami Dolphins roster. And what we're going to do is we're going to go position group by position group and make a determination of whether or not we would like to see the Dolphins try to bring in some more veteran help. And if so, who those players might be for the Dolphins to target. Sound good, Brain?
Sounds like a plan, my man.
Let's do it. Let's start on offense for the Miami Dolphins. Let's look at wide receiver. Obviously, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Malik Washington, Eric Ezukama, Nick Westbrook-Akine. They've also got D. Eskridge. They've also got Tarek Black. They've also got Taj Washington. Don't forget Taj Washington. And then they brought in a whole heap of undrafted rookies. Theo Weiss Jr., Andrew Armstrong, AJ Henning, Monterey Baldwin. It's a big group here, Brain. Are we thinking that you'd like to see I feel like this is a pretty solid group here. Are you thinking that you would like to see the Dolphins bring in another veteran wide receiver to get into the mix? Maybe even two?
I think before we even get into position group by position group, we need to kind of identify what are we trying to do here? Like what are we trying to do with this team in general?
I think what you're looking to do is to, what I would be looking to give this team as complete of a look to compete as possible. I think if you're really looking at, listen, if it's me, I'm not signing anybody else. I'm letting the guys that I have do the job that they could do. And if I go 2-15 and I end up with the number 1 draft pick, so be it. But that's not how the Dolphins are going to take this. This is, I think Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel, as they are transitioning to the new version of this football team, they are looking to build a team that can be as complete as possible while also becoming younger and scrappier. So I think with that, and more physical. So I think they are looking specifically to try to bring in players who will help the younger players on this team move along and grow. I think theoretically they're looking for players that are going to help this team win now and help this team reach its ceiling. But I think if you're being realistic at this point, the ceiling for this team is, we're talking the absolute ceiling for this team is probably 10, maybe 11 wins and, sneaking in with a wild card berth. I think that's probably the absolute ceiling at this point. So I just think they're looking to try to bring in players to help the young guys on this roster reach their full potential, reach their full potential as soon as possible.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree with the ceiling. I agree with what they're trying to do. I think you missed out on one caveat, which is they're clearly concerned with cash spending. And they're clearly not wanting to restructure a lot of deals so that they can give themselves as much flexibility. And so because of that, and because of this impending, Jalen Ramsey situation, which is going to cost them a bunch of cap space, they don't have a ton of cap space without restructuring, 1 or 2 deals. They probably will end up restructuring a deal or 2 at some point, while they're filling out the last couple of spots in this roster. But I think they're clearly, with what they showed you this offseason, not trying to do that. And so if they're not trying to do that, they are operating on a very finite budget. And so, yes, they're like, I think they want to compete this year. And I think there are reasons to think that this team, if they fill a couple of holes, could actually be better positioned to compete for a playoff spot this year, and could be better than the team ended up finishing last year. I think that's in the realm of possibilities. And so I do think it's a good idea for them to try to fill out some roster spots and try to compete. But at the same time, knowing that they're not actively trying to win a championship this year, they don't need to do anything to mortgage any kind of future. And that includes, restructuring certain contracts that maybe, for example, the Austin Jackson contract. I think when we signed Austin Jackson to that contract, it was well-deserved. It was a valuable contract. And I think when the way Austin Jackson played, before he got hurt last year, we all felt really good about that contract. And there's certainly a world where Austin Jackson is healthy this year, and that is still a really great contract. But there's also the realization that Austin Jackson has had one healthy year. Austin Jackson's as injury prone as Tua, if not more. He's missed more games in his NFL career than Tua has. And so, as much as we've talked about how, you don't want to restructure Tua's contract because you need to have an off-ramp of that contract. Well, Austin Jackson is another one that you don't really want to touch that contract. And there are a couple of those that I think, the Dolphins could have restructured, and they could have been more aggressive in free agency this year. And they chose not to. And instead, they're taking a much more frugal, cautiously optimistic approach. And so I think that is, they want to fill the roster spots, but they're not going to overpay. And I think that's generally a good thing considering where this team is at. And I think that's the goal is how do we fill the roster spots, but not overpay?
Right. I think that's right. I think that's what they want to do. And I think you're not going to see them I don't think restructuring anybody's contract unless something ridiculous were to fall into their lap. I think for the most part, we're looking at a situation where they are just trying to fill those holes to the best of their ability and, and compete as best they can. That's, I think, what we're looking at here realistically. So let's go back to it. Let's go back to those wide receivers that I mentioned. It feels to me that based on what you've got there, you feel pretty good. You feel pretty good about those wide receivers. At least I do. How do you feel about it?
There's nothing. I feel pretty good about it, assuming, because they're keeping Tyreek Hill at this point. We know that. And so there's nothing there that's going to add anything to this room of any value that's not going to, at this point, you want to roll with the guys that you have, and you want to see what you've got in some of these like bottom of the roster wide receivers. Like, you don't want to block Malik Washington from any growth. If Taj Washington ends up making the roster, you want to see what he could do. If D. Eskridge is the return guy, then we'll see what D. Eskridge is going to do. But there's nobody out there that, is going to be a huge snap taker for them. So why are you going to spend the money on it? And really, I think we've got enough guys competing for like our 5th and 6th wide receiver that I think you don't really need to address it.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Let's look at running backs. Devon Achane, Jalen Wright. They signed Alexander Madison, drafted Ollie Gordon II. They've also brought in Nate Noel, and they've, of course, also got fullback Alec Ingold there for the running back room. I don't know. My gut is that room is gonna stay basically the same. They're not gonna bring anybody else in.
I agree. I think when they made the decision to sign Alexander Madison, that was the guy that they decided to sign.
And then they drafted younger Alexander Madison.
Right. And that's your competition. And that's, right. And, I doubt that both of them will make the roster, but, I suppose that's even a possibility. Because like,
Listen, somebody's got to be the inactive running back every week to fill that Jeff Wilson role. Somebody's got to be the inactive running back every week.
Yeah, because like if they wanted to go out and sign, Gus Edwards, they would have signed Gus Edwards instead of Alexander Madison. But
right.
They signed Alexander Madison. I think this is firmly going to be, Savon Ahmed and Jalen Wright. And again, a lot of the moves and a lot of what we're going to talk about is the whole idea of the Dolphins getting younger. It's finding out what you have in some of your younger players too.
Right.
So bringing in veterans to contribute and only serve as a blockade on these younger players, I just don't think it really does you much, it doesn't really do you much service. So I think you're going to see them kind of roll with what they got, especially at a position like running back.
Yeah, let's look at the tight end room. Jonnu Smith, Pharaoh Brown, Julian Hill, Tanner Connor, Hayden Rucci, Jalen Conyers, the very highly touted undrafted free agent the Dolphins brought in at tight end. Again, I think this is another room where I don't think I see the Dolphins going out and spending any more money. I think that they are feeling they've already gone ahead and brought in Pharaoh Brown to be the big blocking tight end. Jonnu Smith, I think, is very much embedded in this offense in his role. I think at this point, you're really kind of testing the ceiling of Julian Hill, and you're kind of hoping that, at this point, I probably have given up on the Tanner Connor experience, but you're hopeful that Jalen, that Conyers can come in and compete with Julian Hill for that last tight end spot.
Yeah, or even Hayden Rucci. And I don't know even if Pharaoh Brown is the number 2 tight end.
I'd be very surprised if they went out and brought Pharaoh Brown in and he ended up not making the team. Although with this front office, maybe I should.
I would not be surprised. He's not guaranteed anything. I would expect that he's going to make the roster. I would say he's got an inside track at making the roster, but he's got to go out. He's got to go out there and he's got to beat out Julian Hill first. Because if he doesn't beat out Julian Hill, then Julian Hill is firmly the number 2 tight end on the roster. Then you start looking at how many tight ends are we going to keep? Because we're also keeping a fullback. And then do one of these younger guys pop? Does Pharaoh Brown, does he get hurt in training camp? Is he is he popping in training camp? Because the Dolphins went out and signed, I forget who the tight end was that they signed last year, who was, bounced around and everybody talked about his upside. And he was, basura in the training camp and preseason. So it's we're really going to talk up Pharaoh Brown as being a sure thing and a sure upgrade over Julian Hill. No, I don't think that's the case, but regardless, I think there's enough guys here that, again, I don't think the Dolphins are going to be going out there and spending it. At the end of the day, it's one of those things where if they really need a blocking tight end, there'll be somebody that they could pick up at some point.
Yeah. So I think we're all feeling good at the tight end room. And then, of course, let's stop at quarterback. It's Tua Tagovailoa, it's Zach Wilson, it's Quinn Ewers. They're not bringing in another cornerback maybe they'll bring in somebody else to be on the practice squad, but I think very strongly that those are the 3 guys, unless one of the 2 is an absolute disaster and or Tua suffers another injury. I don't see them going out and spending money on a quarterback ahead of time, just because, listen, as we saw last year, they're going to be able to go out and find somebody that's going to be of whatever quality. They're not going to, it's not like there's somebody hanging out there that they're going to spend money on. They already spent the money to bring in Zach Wilson. They're not going to spend more money to bring in another veteran quarterback unless something goes haywire. That's the unit. That's the group. They might bring in another undrafted guy to be, a practice squad type guy, but that's the quarterback room.
Yeah, 100%.
Great. Let's look at the offensive line. Here we go. Patrick Paul, James Daniels, Aaron Brewer, Jonah Savoyanaya, Austin Jackson. That is basically the consensus starting 5 for the Miami Dolphins on the offensive line, although there is some conversation about whether Daniels or Savoia are starting on the right or left. The rest of the offensive line room is Ryan Hayes, Jackson Carman, Andrew Meyer, Liam Eichenberg, Larry Borum, Keon Smith, Josh Preby, Addison West, Teddy Cushy. They've also got Braden Daniels and Bayron Matos. Those are your Dolphins offensive linemen. Brain, as you look at this group, is this a group that you would like to see supplemented with maybe one or two more veteran offensive linemen?
I think they need a swing tackle. I'm not sold on the idea of Larry Borum being the swing tackle.
I'm not sold on the idea of Liam Eichenberg.
I'm not sold on the idea of Liam Eichenberg, but I think
just like the entire idea of him, I'm just not sold on it.
I think they could use realistically two guys to bring in and into this competition. But I think one position that I would definitely, if I was to prioritize like a utility inside guy or a swing tackle, I would get a swing tackle because I think we have far more question marks at tackle.
Yes.
We don't know what to expect with Patrick Paul. We're all hoping that Patrick Paul takes a big leap and is a quality starting left tackle, but we really don't know that. At right tackle, we're hoping that Austin Jackson is healthy, but that we just covered that. Like he's had one healthy season in his career. And then like those are your two starters. And then we're talking about Larry Borum and we're talking about Keon Smith.
Yeah.
And I don't want Keon Smith and Larry Borum to be gifted spots because those are two guys that can play tackle. I guess we also have Ryan Hayes, but like we need a veteran tackle that can compete there. Now, the question is, there's multiple questions here when it comes to that. Like, if you go get a veteran tackle, is it a veteran tackle that has a bunch of experience that you're going to have to shell out a few $1 million to and give some sort of guaranteed money? If so, then that guy's getting a roster spot. Or do you go out and you maybe sign a guy and you get a guy for like maybe $2 million, not like a whole bunch of guaranteed money, and you're bringing him in to compete and it's just an open competition.
Can I make a suggestion for somebody
Sure.
who the Dolphins could bring in for $1 or $2 million to compete and make it an open competition?
Yes.
Bring him back.
No.
Bring me Dan Feeney back.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to say Isaiah Wynn.
No, I listen, you are absolutely kidding yourself if you don't think there's a reasonable possibility that the Miami Dolphins are going to bring back Isaiah Wynn, or did Robert Jones sign somewhere else? Did he sign a contract with somebody else? I think he did. But if you are out there thinking there's no chance the Dolphins are going to end up bringing Isaiah Wynn back, you're wrong. Liam Eichenberg is on the roster.
Robert Jones signed with the Cowboys.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it is absolutely within the realm of possibility that the Dolphins bring Isaiah Wynn back. And at this point, it wouldn't be a horrible move based on what they would pay him. But listen, at this point, I am in favor of the Dolphins bringing anybody in to the offensive line room who has the potential of pushing Liam Eichenberg further down the totem pole. Anybody. If the Dolphins announced tomorrow they were signing Mike Oliva to be the backup swing tackle and pushing Liam Eichenberg, that would push Liam Eichenberg down the totem pole.
I don't think it would, though. I don't think it would. I get your point, though. So would you rather, given your feelings on Liam Eichenberg, if the Dolphins were to invest one free agent contract on the offensive line from now until training camp, you would rather invest on like a utility inside guy, or you would rather invest in a tackle?
I mean, I'm interested in looking at them bringing in somebody who has a little bit of the flexibility. I think that's probably the most important thing, somebody that can be in multiple positions. But, I'm also not open. I'm not, opposed to the idea of it being, multiple people. Do you know what I mean? I think you can bring in people who are, at multiple positions,
Yeah.
a Cody Whitehill, a Daniel Brunskill, these are inside guys, but they've got some ability there. You can, Isaiah Wynn is one of those guys. He's a guy that, listen, he's not the greatest, but he's got some ability, and for the price tag, you could do worse in terms of just bringing somebody in and potentially competing. Yeah. I would put Isaiah Wynn over Liam Eichenberg in the rotation, wouldn't you?
I mean, I would, but the issue with using a roster spot on Isaiah Wynn is the opportunity cost, because you go and you get Isaiah Wynn, and then when Isaiah Wynn gets hurt, it's like he's not there and you just wasted the roster spot.
Right.
That's the whole issue with Isaiah Wynn. Like, if you're trying to get deeper and more stable as a franchise, and you're gonna go out. I mean, look, I guess, like, if you're throwing out there like no guarantees or whatever, and he's got to compete for a roster spot, like, yeah, I get it. But then what happens when he wins the roster spot and he gets hurt in week 1? It's like how many times are you going to sign up for the same damn ride? Right. And like, so I think you got to move on there. I got a couple of names at tackle.
Let's hear it.
These aren't great names. I mean, one of them, I think one name that is interesting to me is Tyron Smith. The question there is, would Tyron Smith take like a $1 or $2 million deal to be your swing tackle? Or does Tyron Smith basically say, well, I'm not going to go there unless I'm like, penciled in as a starter? Like that's becomes part of the issue with getting some of these guys, because like anybody could sit here and say, well, like, yeah, we should bring in Brandon Scherf. But it's like, all right, well, we just signed Daniels and we just drafted Savanaya. So like, you're not bringing in Brandon Scherf and having him be your, utility backup offensive lineman.
No, if you sign Brandon Scherf, you're saying that Savanaya is not going to be a starter for you.
Or you're starting Savanaya at like right tackle. But then what do you do with exactly? Like, it's not going to happen. The point is it's not going to happen. And you're not going to spend a bunch of money on the kind of guy that's going to be guaranteed a roster spot, because you have your starting 5. So you are on a finite budget. You want to fill out this roster, but who are you going to get to come and play for like $1 million or $1.5 million to be your 7th, 8th offensive lineman? Because I think where you're at right now is you have your starting 5. You went out and you brought in Larry Borom. I think if Larry Borom was like, your 7th or 8th offensive lineman, okay. Then you've got Liam Eichenberg, and that's kind of the same thing. Like, really, both of those guys at their ceiling should be your like 8th offensive lineman. So what you really need is you need a 6th and a 7th offensive lineman. And so we're now at this point where it's like, if you don't spend and bring some sort of veteran in, you're basically just hoping that, Keon Smith takes a big leap because you were really happy with what you saw at the tail end of 2023, even though he got hurt and, in training camp last year and didn't play it down. So you don't really know.
Greer said they were really hopeful about Keon Smith. So, let's see how much smoke he was blowing in that press conference with Keon Smith this training camp.
I believe they are really high on Keon Smith, but I also believe that it would be a mistake to come into this offseason or this training camp and say Larry Borom and Keon Smith are battling it out for swing tackle.
Oh, yeah.
And then whoever doesn't get it is probably still on the roster. Like, that doesn't sit well with me. So Tyron Smith is interesting. I don't know if the appeal, if the Dolphins would appeal to him, or if he would be looking for more of a chance at competing for a starting job. Another couple of names here, specifically at tackle, are Jedrick Wills, who was a first round pick for the Browns. Hasn't necessarily panned out, but isn't necessarily terrible. I think he could come in and probably be be in a competition for swing tackle and probably be the favorite to win it. And I don't think you'd have to spend a bunch of money. He probably would prefer to play on like a 1-year prove it deal. And the sales pitch would be, well, look, our starting left tackle has very little experience starting. He's drafted as a project. He's not a sure thing. And our starting right tackle is injured every single year. And if you look at our team as a whole over the last, 3 or 4 years, we're constantly playing with backup tackles. So the idea of a swing tackle that wants to get some more starting experience to earn a better contract the following year, the Dolphins actually seem like a perfect spot. So I look at like Jedrick Wills, and I think that makes a lot of sense. On the interior, Daniel Brunskill makes a lot of sense. Will Hernandez might make sense. I mean, everybody's going to always bring up the name Dalton Risner, maybe. But I'm with you. Like, if nothing else, if nobody else is jumping out at you, why not just bring back Dan Feeney?
Thank you.
I got one more name for you though.
Okay.
He was he was signed by the team last year, and he was having a good camp by all accounts, and then was cut.
Yeah.
How about Jack Driscoll? Tackle guard flexibility.
Yeah, why not? Bring him back. Bring him in. Why not? I think at this point, I just think to me, it really doesn't matter who the bodies are. I just would like to see the Dolphins bring in another couple of guys to see if they can't successfully listen. I think they're gambling. They took a gamble on the Liam Eichenberg thing because he's got familiarity with the system and all of that. But I think if you can find somebody to come in on the cheap and beat Liam Eichenberg out, your line is improving. I
don't think that there's a world where Liam Eichenberg isn't on the roster, because I think that the reason they brought Liam Eichenberg back is because he can play center.
Well, yeah, but they brought in Andrew Meyer to be behind Aaron Brewer.
I guess that would be the bad. I don't think they're viewing Liam Eichenberg as a guard as much as they're viewing Liam Eichenberg as a center guard, as a guy who can play guard but is here to try to win the backup center position. If Andrew Meyer beats out Liam Eichenberg at center, then Liam Eichenberg might not make the roster. That's the only way. That's the only way he doesn't make the roster.
As Daryl Turner says in the comments on YouTube, I'd take the good humor ice cream man over Eichenberg. Tremendous. All right, we're going to move to the defensive side of the ball in just a minute. But first, a reminder to everybody to go to caneswear.com. It's the spot that Miami fans shop. That's caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. Make sure you head over to caneswear.com. They got all kinds of Miami Dolphins merch. If you're looking for things for the Miami Heat, even though their season is over, maybe you're looking for some Florida Panthers gear. They got that over there at caneswear.com. Perhaps you are looking to support Inter Miami and you want to get yourself a nice bright pink jersey and you don't want to wait until the Dolphins rivals uniforms are introduced. You can get your Inter Miami gear. Caneswear.com. It's the spot Miami fan shop. That's caneswear.com. Caneswear.com. And we thank caneswear.com very much for being our sponsor here on the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. Brain, as we mosey on over to the defensive side of the ball, let's start. How do we want to do this? Let's start with the edge group. The defensive line, if you will. So our defensive line is Kenneth Grant, Benito Jones, Zach Sealer. You've also got Alex Huntley, Jordan Phillips, Matt Dickerson, Trayvon Ripka, Zeke Biggers. You've also got Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. Some people might also consider Chop Robinson in that group, Quentin Bell. But Brain, when you look at the defensive line, how are you feeling about this group? Particularly, I think, on the interior. How are you feeling about that defensive line on the inside?
Well, look, you've got Sealer. You drafted Kenneth Grant in the first round. You drafted Jordan Phillips in the 5th round. You still got Benito Jones. I think all 4 of those guys are making the roster.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, how many guys are you gonna keep? Because you look at the edge group, and I think we're assuming at this point, because his injury happened so early in the year, and he seems to be going well with everything, seems to be going well with the rehab, that Jalen Phillips is going to be ready. Bradley Chubb is going to be there. They took their time with Bradley Chubb, so he's certain, and they picked up his contract, so obviously he's going to be there. You've got Chop Robinson. You've got Quentin Bell, who you picked up, who you brought back. So, I mean, that's 8 guys right there. Maybe you're going to have like 1 or 2 more guys. You used a draft pick on Zeke Biggers. Do I think that guarantees him a roster spot? No, but he's a big guy. And so, I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up making the roster. I think I'd like to see, as far as guys that can kind of play on the edge with their hand in the dirt, sort of like an edge / interior guy, like kind of, like Emmanuel Ogbah was for this team last year. That would be the kind of player that I would want. But like with what they have there, I don't know that I wouldn't be spending a lot of money on it. So it's just like who's a guy that's out there that kind of fits into it, that you can get, relatively cheap. I don't know, like, does William Golston do anything for you?
I mean,
like, I don't know. I mean, some of these guys, like pick your guy. I don't think you're looking for somebody that's going to play like a whole bunch of snaps, but like, another guy, Maurice Hurst. I think there's enough guys on here that, like, I don't even know what the name is going to be, but I think there's enough guys that are available that the Dolphins are going to just kind of set their price, and they'll be like, and they might even do it with a couple of guys. It might be kind of similar to what they did last year when they brought in a bunch of guys.
Sure.
Just like, hey, here's an $800,000 contract with like $400,000 guaranteed. We'll give that to like 2 or 3 guys. We'll bring those guys in. We'll have them battle it out with some of the other, with either, with Zeke Biggers and a couple of undrafted free agents. And we'll see, kind of what sticks, because at the end of the day, it's going to be like 5-6 guys battling for 1 or 2 roster spots.
Yeah. I think there are guys out there, like a Linval Joseph is somebody that you could have your eye on. John Jenkins from, somebody in that world, Taven Bryan, like one of those types of guys that you could bring in on a reasonable deal and just, again, add them to the competition. And if there's a way that it ends up strengthening the room a little bit, then fantastic. And I think, a guy like Zeke Biggers, Jordan Phillips, if those guys don't make the roster, those are, very good, very strong practice squad candidates who are going to be available, in the future as you look forward. Let's look to the edge of that lineup. Let's look at, you've got Jalen Phillips. All right, let's look at that edge group, right? Jalen Phillips, as we mentioned, Bradley Chubb, we mentioned Quentin Bell, Chop Robinson. Those are your sort of outside linebackers. Mo Kamara, Cameron Good. Grayson Murphy was a guy that a lot of people were really high on before he got hurt before the season started last year. William Bradley King, Derek McClendon. These are your kind of outside linebackers and your edge guys. Alex Huntley is one of the undrafted free agents. You've got Matt Dickerson, Trayvon Ripka. The edge group is a group that I feel pretty strongly about. Brandon, one of the questions that I got, and I answered it in the first Dolphins Talk Extra mailbag segment that we did, was about a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. Is he a guy? He, to me, feels like a guy that is while he's a guy with an injury history and a guy that has passed his prime and probably still going to be more expensive. So he doesn't seem to me like the kind of guy that the Dolphins are going to look after in this group. But I think you could find a veteran at a reasonable price to maybe bring in to supplement the group. But otherwise, I mean, this is one of those areas on the defense that I feel most comfortable with what the Dolphins have in-house already.
Similar to, what we said about running back, similar to what we said about wide receiver. There's enough here and there's enough investment in young guys here that what you don't want to do is spend a bunch of money, because you're not going to spend a bunch of money, because that's one of the objectives here, is not to spend a bunch of money. You don't want to spend a bunch of money to bring in a veteran that's only going to blockade you from finding out what you have in some of these younger players, because you don't want to go into next offseason and be saying, oh, well, we don't know what we have in Jordan Phillips because we didn't play him, because we brought in John Jenkins for a year to play nose tackle, and then we played John Jenkins and Benito Jones, and then Jordan Phillips didn't get any playing time. There's no point in it. We're not winning the Super Bowl this year, so let's give these guys a chance to play. Do you want more depth? There's going to be some injury. There's going to be some attrition. You want some more depth, but you don't want to be spending $3-4 million for a guy that has to come in and play a bunch of snaps for what? Like it just, and the other thing is, like, do you really think that somebody like, what was his name? The guy that you were just talking about, the Jadeveon Clowney. Do you really think Jadeveon Clowney is going to, like, this guy has basically been a guy that has been a mercenary ever since he got off of his rookie deal, that he's going to go to the highest bidder with a chance to make the playoffs.
Right.
The Dolphins are not a huge destination for somebody that's looking to compete, and they're not going to be a huge destination for somebody that's looking to make a payday on a year where they're clearly not trying to spend money. No. So Jadeveon,
the players that are looking to
make a lot.
Players that are looking to sign a deal with the Dolphins are guys who feel like they did not get what they deserved in this free agency window and are looking to reinvent themselves, and so will be willing to sacrifice. Kind of like the Zach Bond situation. Like they will sign a small deal and then hope that they can outplay the short contract and then parlay that into a bigger contract down the road. And so that is, I think, what the Dolphins are going to be looking at that position. When you go back inside with the linebacker group, just here's the full linebacker group as it is. Inside, Jordan Brooks, Tyrell Dotson, Willie Gay Jr., KJ Britt, Daquan Jackson, Channing Tindall is still on the team, and Eugene Asante. Again, this is another group. It wouldn't surprise me if they found a couple of guys, street free agents on the cheap, that they could bring in to just compete with that group, because I think there is no chance. Like at this point, I'm waiting. Like I think this is the year that Channing Tindall finally gets cut before the season starts and doesn't make the 53, because I'm not going to expect anything to come out of that situation. So I don't know. My feeling is that maybe bring in one or two guys here, but if not, what you've got, I think, is fine. You've got the spots filled. So I don't know. I just kind of feel like whatever with this linebacker group.
I think this is the best linebacker group they've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Top to bottom. And that's why Channing Tindall is not going to make the roster.
Yeah.
Because I think they have 4 legitimate off-ball linebackers here. So there's no need to spend any money at this position. I think you've got what you got. And the only way Channing Tindall makes this roster is if there's a significant injury in front of him.
Let's go to the secondary then. And
here we've got lots of opportunity.
Yeah. Here we go. I'm just going to go read the whole at cornerback. You've got Storm Duck. Jalen Ramsey is currently on the team. And then you've got Kader Kohu. You also have Cam Smith, Jason Marshall Jr., Artie Burns. You've also got Isaiah Johnson, Jason Maitre, Ethan Robinson, BJ Adams, and John Saunders Jr. I believe they also have I guess they don't have Ethan Bonner. There he is. Almost missed his name. Ethan Bonner is there. BJ Adams is there. Brain, this cornerback room, there's nothing here. I mean, if you make the assumption that Jalen Ramsey is not going to be with this team when the season starts, what you are relying on, if you are trying to say that you've got anything here at all, you are relying on the hope that Kader Kohu is going to be more than what he has been, and that Cam Smith is going to come good. And I'm not willing to bank on any of that. So I think at this point, the Dolphins, if they're going to spend money anywhere in free agency, it's in that position. And I should mention that the Dolphins actually did sign a cornerback today. They signed a cornerback named Kendall Sheffield, who was is the most front page sports football made up name I've ever heard. But Kendall Sheffield was present for the Dolphins rookie camp over the weekend. And the Dolphins have signed him to a contract. I don't know the terms yet, but Sheffield is 28 years old. He's appeared in 49 career games between the Atlanta Falcons, San Francisco 49ers, Tennessee Titans, and most recently New York Jets. He spent some time on the practice squad of the Dallas Cowboys in 2022. This, according to the Sun Sentinel's David Furones. So, Brain, I mean, that doesn't make the cornerback room anything less bereft. It's like, if there's a place where the Dolphins are going to spend some money this offseason, it's this position.
Yes. And this is the one spot where they should bring in a veteran that can start. Now, the thing is do you go out and bring in a starter, or do you go out there and bring in someone who can start? Because there's the answer to that will determine how much money you're willing to spend.
Yeah.
I think there's enough guys here. And I think you can go out there and you can spend money. Look, you're going to wait until after June 1st because you're going to need cap space, when you cut Jalen Ramsey. Because if you cut or if you trade Jalen Ramsey now, then you're basically you can't do anything until unless you restructure somebody, and that's including signing your Jonas Savaiinaea to his rookie deal. You wouldn't even be able to do that without restructure. They're gonna probably have to restructure somebody, whether that's Zach Sealer, whether that's Jordan Brooks, whether that's Alec Ingold. They're going to have to restructure somebody to open up a couple of $1 million somewhere at some point. It's probably going to be after June 1st. A couple names stand out to me. Rasul Douglas stands out because there's a guy that you can play in the slot. You can play him outside. I think you can get him like a 1-year deal. Maybe you give him like $5 or $6 million. If you're really worried about the cap situation, you could throw a void year on the cap onto the contract, and you could have like a $2.5 million cap hit. And another guy that stands out to me is Shaq Griffin. These are guys that I think you could bring in, and these guys. Rasul Douglas probably is guaranteed a starting spot if you're signing him. Shaq Griffin, I don't think is. I think you bring him in and it's like he's a contributor, but is he necessarily going to be a starter? No, you have an open competition there. The other name that to me screams, a possibility is Asante Samuel Jr.
Yeah,
because
I think somebody mentioned him in the chat earlier this evening.
And to me, it's all about what Asante Samuel Jr. is getting from other teams as far as offers, as far as multi-year deals.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense at this point for Asante Samuel that maybe it's worth it for him to do a 1-year prove it deal. And then maybe he can bet on himself and get a better multi-year deal. Otherwise, he might be taking like a 2 or 3 year deal where, he's only getting like 8, 9, 10 million per, which is a lot less than what he was reportedly looking for. He was looking
apparently, Mike is noting in the chat that apparently it has just come out that Asante Samuel had neck surgery in April.
All right. Well, if he's not healthy and they're flagging him for that, then, I probably wouldn't touch it. But if he's ready to go, I mean, a 1 year deal for like a couple $1 million, but
Boy, that'll knock a couple $1 million off the price tag. Neck surgery.
But I don't know. Maybe he just sits out the year because he's got a neck surgery. I don't know.
Yeah.
But those other names, veteran guys who have starting experience, who have played a lot of snaps. The secondary needs it. The cornerback room needs it. Shaq Griffin, Rasul Douglas. I almost called him Rasul Butler. Miami Heat lifer.
That's a very different guy. Wouldn't want him playing quarterback.
No. Although you put a 6'7" guy out there, a lot of length.
Yeah.
3-and-D guy. I think you need a veteran in this room. I don't hate the idea of we've got a bunch of young corners that have some upside. Let's throw them out there. We're going to like our front. I actually feel really good about our front seven. The thing with the Dolphins is that whether it's the offensive line or whether it's the front seven, there's inherently these question marks regarding health. And that's going to be the case going into this season. But if healthy, I like our front seven a lot. And so I like the idea of having a bunch of young corners that could get an opportunity. But I think you need a veteran corner there that has starting experience and has played a lot of downs, a lot of snaps to really stabilize that unit. So that's why I'd be looking at like a Shaq Griffin or a Rasul Douglas.
Well, let's look at safety. It's the last room. We're not going to talk about special teams here. Look, there's a punter battle as of right now between Ryan Stonehouse and Jake Bailey, but it wouldn't surprise me if Jake Bailey was eventually to get cut. Obviously, Jason Sanders is here. They've got their new long snapper and Super Bowl champion Joe Cardona. And so, like special teams is taken care of. So let's look at safety. Ifeatu Melifonwu, Ashton Davis, Dante Trader Jr., Elijah Campbell, Patrick McMorris, Jordan Colbert. I mean, this safety room is not very strong either. I mean, you're banking on Patrick McMorris really being something here, but I'm not putting a lot of trust in. Listen, I know a lot of people are high on Ifeatu Melifonwu, but his problem is he's like just like Austin Jackson, just like Tua Tagovailoa. This is a guy who can't stay healthy. So, that is not what you're looking for here. You need to find somebody who can come in and be a starting safety for you and be present constantly. So I think this is another area, Brain, where I think the Dolphins need to spend some money.
Potentially a little bit here. The name that jumps out to me is Julian Blackmon.
Yes.
Because I think you bring him in and you have somebody back there that you can say, like, this is a guy that played over 93% of the snaps last season for the Colts. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of money, but you get a 27-year-old safety who, in the prime of his career, you throw him out, you put him there, you've got Melifonwu, and then you say, look, between Ashton Davis and McMorris and Trader and Elijah Campbell, like, these guys can all battle out for the depth pieces, but I need to have at least two safeties that I feel comfortable with. And right now, I mean, we've got a bunch of names, but I don't know that we have one safety that we feel like super comfortable with. So you bring in a guy like a Julian Blackmon, maybe a Jordan Whitehead, and then I would say, all right, well, now I feel confident in one safety and we have enough other guys that we kind of have, we're feeling okay about that. Maybe by the end of it, we'll have 2 or 3 guys that we feel good about.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments, Who do you think the Dolphins should target in free agency? Where do you think the Dolphins should try to strengthen this team as they try to build out this new version, this new vision of the Miami Dolphins? That's going to wrap us up for this show. Make sure you're subscribed to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Don't forget, tomorrow, Tuesday, Mike dropping a show with a very special surprise guest. And this is a big one. So make sure you tune in. You're not going to want to miss it. And make sure you subscribe to Dolphins Talk Extra, which is where we are about to go. We're going to patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Right now, we're going to do our bonus segment for our subscribers. Every episode, once a week, you get a bonus segment of the Same Old Dolphin Show. You also get additional podcasts on things other than football. We might even talk a little basketball tonight. Might talk a little hockey. Might talk a little baseball as the Cubs lead the Marlins 5-0. So I'm not going to talk too much about the 2025 Cubs leading the 2025 Marlins because I know what my brother's retort is going to be. But I just want to mention that's something that's going on. So head on over patreon.com/Dolphins Talk for as little as $3 a month. And you can join us over there with all the extra content that's going to be coming your way, including access to our private Discord channel, where we have a lot of fun conversation that is significantly less toxic than other places on the internet. Brand, any parting words for the people before we get out of here?
No. Join us on the Patreon. I promise you, far fewer screw ups on the Patreon. You get what you pay for. You on the free show, we screw up. On the Patreon, we don't screw up as much. And if we do screw up, it's part of the charm.
That's right. It's part of the shtick over there. So join us over there, dolphinstalk.com or patreon.com/Dolphins. I see I'm still on the paid side, the free side right now, so I screw up from time to time. Patreon.com/Dolphins Talk. Join us there. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins!
I wonder if James Posey would be a good corner.